on this freezing cold night. So excited that you're here with us. And yeah, thankful that you made it here alive. I wasn't sure if my truck was gonna start. I don't know if you've noticed it's been cold. Has anybody posted about it on the internet? Seems like there's two types of people out there right now. There's the ones that are just like they've never experienced winter before, even though they've lived in Edmonton their whole life, and this is like every year. Or there's the opposite side of the people that are constantly like, you call this cold? I worked in Fort McMurray for like 10 years and it was always minus 50 there and I didn't mind. And they're pretending like this is not actually that cold when it gets to minus 39. I walked to my truck last night and I didn't think I was gonna be able to get back to my apartment. Like, it was pretty cold. And on top of that, you're here on Super Bowl Sunday. So for those that are watching now on YouTube because they skipped tonight and watched the Super Bowl, we want to welcome you as well, even though they're watching on Wednesday or something like that. But we're pumped you're here, whether you're here in person, whether you're watching on the stream, or whether you're listening on the podcast. Who knows when or where you're connecting with us. We're just glad that you're with us this evening. I want to ask you a question. Have you ever met somebody who just clearly is pretending to be something or someone that they're not? Like, just not at all. Like, I'll give you an example. There was a time in my life when I was about 13, 14 years old, where I thought I was going to be a skateboarder. I don't know if you can tell or not, I don't really have a skateboarder's body. Like, it just wasn't really something God designed me to do, but I thought this was a good idea because at the time, the popularity of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater video games were never higher. Like, this was the peak of Tony Hawk. And I thought, man, I want to do that. It doesn't look that hard. Like, how hard could it be dropping in like 20 feet into a swimming pool and then flying up in the air, especially when you're 6'5" and 260 pounds. And on top of that, I was also born a big guy with, like, I'd size at that time 15 feet, and so like they were bigger than the skateboard. So what I'm trying to say is that dream didn't last very long. Though I tried to grow out my hair, I tried to buy some DC shoes, which didn't make me a better skater, and I could do okay with the balance. That actually wasn't a huge issue for me. It's when you would try to do tricks or like ollie, or like, for me, jumping in general just doesn't happen very easily. And I wasn't designed for it, but I tried my hardest. Eventually, I did have to give up on that dream, believe it or not. But there's lots of examples of people pretending to be something that they're not, or trying to give off the impression that they're doing something or being something that they actually aren't. Have you ever seen the show Catfished? I don't know if it's on anymore, but it was around like in the last 5 years and was pretty popular. So if you haven't seen it before, it's this show where they followed people in these online dating relationships. And what they ended up doing was following these people who would be like completely in love based on their only online experience with this other person. It was usually some guy who's, maybe not the most attractive guy, but he's found this bombshell 10 out of 10, just beautiful girl, the girl of his dreams, and he can't believe he's won the lottery. How did this girl, she must be blind or something because she's into me and I don't get it, but hey, the text messages are working, and he's convinced that this is the love of his life and he's going to marry her. And the show follows him as he's talking about it, and he's like, yeah, she doesn't want to like talk on video chat. She doesn't really want it to meet in person, but like, it's got to work out. Like, she's probably just really busy all the time. Like, what could happen? As you hear this, you're like, man, dude, red flag after red flag after red flag. But he's so sure that this is his true love that he just goes with it. And the cameras follow him as he goes to meet the person. And often it's some guy who's in like his late 30s, early 40s, living in his mom's basement, walks out when he's expecting to meet the love of his life. And this guy walks out with Cheeto dust on his fingers, and he's just breaks the guy's heart because it wasn't who he thought it was at all. And I don't know why we think that's entertaining, but we do like to watch train wrecks on TV is what I'm learning. Like, let's be honest, TLC should legally have to remove the learning part of the learning channel out of their title of their actual channel at this point. So that's a good example, but let me tell you the worst one I've ever heard of, and this one actually is freaky. And I should put the disclaimer on this story that some of this hasn't gone through the law court system yet. This is alleged, but it seems pretty strong. There's a story from the States of a family that adopted a girl from Ukraine. And like this 8-year-old girl, they said roughly 8, she didn't have any documentation, but a doctor said she's about 8 years old. And they were like, we're gonna give her a good life. We're gonna help her out. This is gonna be great. We're gonna adopt this girl and raise her and love her. And shortly after they brought her home, things started to get weird. And I'm not talking like she played too much Minecraft. I'm saying like she was doing some weird stuff. She accidentally pushed her adopted mom into an electric fence, which is not normal 8-year-old behavior from my encounters with 8-year-olds. I'm not a dad yet, but I'm assuming that's not normal. And from there, she continued on to do some other weird stuff, like her mom caught her pouring drain cleaner into her coffee, and when confronted and asked what she was doing, she said, "I'm poisoning you." I don't know what the parenting book talks about that, but that would freak me out. That's a red flag in the parenting game as far as I would be concerned. She would stand over them in the middle of the night, the article said, and just stare at them. Like you'd wake up, sit up, and she's standing there. They said we had to hide all the sharp objects, which is not something that I would expect from a kid. Which is exactly why it makes perfect sense that as they investigated, she was not a child, but a 30-year-old little person posing as a child, trying to hurt them. That might be the scariest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Like, that's not just catfishing, that's like next level false identity and taking advantage of people, and it makes me terrified of just that whole scenario. But I want to talk to you about something a little less egregious tonight. Because while we may not be posing as somebody that we're not to that extent or trying to be fully in a trend, like we all go towards those different groups at some point in our life. And I think it's the most common in high school, right? Like you see these different groups pop up. And when I was in high school, which was like 15 years ago now or something like that, which makes me feel really old, there was a couple of like dominant groups. There was always jocks. I think jocks transcend everything. But as you can see on the screen, the emo crowd was absolutely huge when I was in high school. And people thought it was cool back then. And, in the moment, we thought so. Like, I think the music is still fantastic. Like, my first concert ever was Green Day with My Chemical Romance opening, which is the most 2006 thing you could ever do, ever. But let me tell you this, before that concert, I actually went and saw Star Wars Revenge of the Sith Episode 3, which makes it literally the most 2006 day you could ever have in the world. But these emo kids, they would kind of dress up with the eye makeup and their bangs would be over their face and they're constantly whipping their hair to try, like you can never see out of one side of your eyes, and it's actually not a practical look at all. But that was popular, and we all have something. If you look back on high school, you probably think of what group. It changes throughout, whatever era it is, what decade. Maybe it was hipsters. I remember there's a time where people would just like wear Toms exclusively and then drink water exclusively out of a wine skin for some unknown reason other than they wanted attention. That was kind of the hipster thing. And every couple of years it changes. But we have these groups, and that's actually a part of how we're designed. It comes down to our inherent need to be liked by our tribe, because if your tribe likes you, it's going to help you to survive for a long time. It's, if you're not a good hunter, then they're going to help you with getting food if your tribe likes you. If they don't like you, you're not going to get food from the people that are good at hunting. So we find these ways of trying to fit in. But what happens when we go too far in this way? What happens when we seek connection, and we do that, but we do it too hard? We go in that direction too far. When we try to create a version of ourselves or a persona that is so far from who we actually are that we lose touch with who we're supposed to be. And maybe you're sitting there like, Jeff, what are you talking about? That's not me. But I can actually tell you that I think this happens to all of us at some point in time. At some point, we're all dealing with something. We're all trying to put on a show of the best version of ourselves we can be. And that's not an inherently wrong thing. We should always strive to present ourselves well, to be the best version of ourselves. And I'm not talking about just trying to do well every day. I'm talking about where you're actually hiding from yourself. We're talking about relationships this series, sex, relationships, dating, all those awesome things. And in this series, we're going to talk about some things that I'm guessing you may not have heard in many churches. Maybe you've never really been in church before. You probably didn't expect them to talk about some of these things. And it's not to say that other churches don't talk about it ever, but it's probably not super common. We want to have real conversations, things that impact your life. And so today I want to look at this through the scope of relationships. Dating, marriage, sex, all these things. We all want to be connected. That's a part of the human experience. We're all driving to be connected at all times, right? Like, we want to be loved. We want to be eventually, at least most of us, I would say, the vast majority want to be in a loving relationship. They want to feel valued. We want to feel attractive and want to feel wanted in every way. That's part of who we are. That's the way we were made. That's the way we were designed to be. But often people find themselves in this just cycle of relationship after relationship, hookup after hookup, date after date, breakup after breakup. And it just seems like nothing works out. Either I can't seem to get a date or I can never get that second date, or I keep having the boyfriend or a girlfriend and it falls apart, it falls apart, it falls apart, it falls apart. And we find ourselves in situations where we're like, what is wrong with me? What is wrong? Like, why do people not love me? Why am I broken? Am I that unwanted? Am I just genuinely unattractive? I remember one time when I was about 22, 21 years old, me and my friend Jordan, we were out at Denny's, which is where all the best conversations in life happen. It's 2 a.m. at Denny's. It's also where a lot of like sketchy stuff happens too, so I'm not recommending it necessarily. But we're out at Denny's and my friend Jordan looks at me and we're complaining. It's like, man, why can't we get girlfriends? Like, like what's wrong with our lives? We've been single for years and years. We've been single for like a year and a half and we thought our world was crumbling at that point. But we really did. And I just stopped. I remember I looked up from my grand slam at him. I said, Jordan, you ever considered we're ugly people? And I just said it deadpan. And you should have seen my friend's face just crack, like he had never contemplated it before. For one moment, he came face to face with the fact that he might be ugly. And then he just cracked. He's like, no, Jeff, don't say that. We are not ugly. We are not ugly. And if someone's walking by, it's like, what are these guys talking about? We're not ugly, man. No, we're beautiful. You're beautiful, man. We didn't like hug or anything, but we told each other we weren't ugly. But in reality, I'm joking, but in reality you get this real feeling of like, what is wrong with me? And maybe there's something just built into who I am that's not good. It seems like everyone else's lives are coming together. It feels like everyone else is getting married all around me. Everybody else has a girlfriend or boyfriend, or their relationship seems so much better. Or I'm not where I want to be, and I'm not happy. Maybe you're happy right now. You feel like you're actually happy, but you can't shake the feeling like there's something just not totally right with who you are at the same time. And often when we find ourselves in these situations, we decide that it's somebody else's fault, right? Like there's always an excuse for why that other person in the relationship or why that other person who didn't want to get into the relationship with you is the problem, right? Like she didn't respect me. Sound familiar? All he did was play video games. It was Fortnite and Warzone and PS4 and whatever it is all the time. And he just ignored me all the time, or he just wanted sex, or he wanted it all the time, and it just wasn't a healthy relationship. Or just, she was a bad person. She never wanted to be with me. That's why she was always texting guys, and I didn't know what was going on. And maybe those things are true for you, and you're thinking, Jeff, no, that actually happened. And I'm not discrediting that bad things happen, or people can be a part of the problem, and they can just genuinely suck and hurt us. But it's so much easier to always look at the other person, isn't it? It's always easier to just say that someone else hurt me, someone else did this, that's why everything falls apart. But the question I have for you is this: if you were in this situation, and this situation, and this situation, and this situation, and they all fell apart over a long period of time, I'm no scientist, but if the continual variable in all these circumstances is you might need to do a self-assessment. Could be really unlucky. Bear with me, let's talk about this. It's easy to blame other people. It's hard to look at yourself in the mirror. We look at the Bible every week, and I'm going to say this every time I'm up here. We turn to the Bible not because it's some old mystical book, but because it's just a documentation that of Jesus. And when we open it, we can see who the person of Jesus is, and there's actual active lessons that will make our lives better if we follow through with what the words say. And we're going to look at that today in a couple spaces. And the first one is this. It's in Matthew 7:3. And Jesus says this, and it references what we're talking about really well. He says, "And why worry about a speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own?" Why worry about the speck in your friend's eye, the piece of sawdust, this nothing particle, when you have a literal tree in your eye? Which sounds ridiculous. Like Jesus sounds like he's a real joker here, but he's actually trying to get a point across. He's trying to say, how can you look at someone else and constantly judge them. And this is part of what we do as humans. I do it too, and say, look at all the problems with him or her. Look at what they did. Look at why they made my life fall apart. But we never want to look at the oversized issue that's right in front of us. Because it's easier to just go forward, to make excuses for our lives, to decide that it's other people's fault. So let me ask you this. Take a look in the mirror. Think about it. When you look in the mirror, do you like who looks back at you? When you look in the mirror, do you like the person that you see? Not your body, not your physical looks. That's a conversation for another time. But who you are. Is the person that you see in the mirror a person that you would want to be with? Is the person that you see, the person that you encounter every day, somebody that you would want to spend time with, to date, to spend potentially the rest of your life with? Is your character where it needs to be, where you would want to be that, or have that in your life? Or are there things that need work? Is there patterns in your behavior? Is there character flaws? Is there continual issues and things that you tend to do? Is there ways you deal with problems and stress that just aren't good, that don't lead to success in any area of life, but that have just continued to happen? What are the red flags in your life that continually dig you down deeper into the mud? We judge others all the time, but we rarely look at ourselves. And the truth is, we're quick to judge. We just don't want to deal with our own crap. And there's a lot of it. I'm in this boat too. I'm not just throwing mud at people here. We all have things to deal with. We're all broken people. We're born that way. It's a constant battle. It's a constant battle every day to be more like who Jesus was and is. To try and set a good example, to be loving in our relationships, whether that's romantically or our friendships or with our family, even when we disagree with them. We want to be better people. But in relationships, we want loving, awesome, thriving relationships. We want to date and get married and live happily ever after, right? Just like the fairy tales say. But it's hard because to be vulnerable with someone else, first you need to be vulnerable with yourself. And if you're not able to be vulnerable with the person that you're entering a relationship with, you will never have success. In a marriage especially, secrets don't go over well. They lead usually to failure, or at least massive blow-ups. And that's why the divorce rate is so high, is that people don't give themselves fully. That's what marriage is. We're giving ourselves. We're completely exposed, not just physically, but in the way that we live our lives and who we are and all of our flaws. When someone says, I do, they don't say, I just take them at, the good times. That's why, for better or for worse. There is a worse to that. In a relationship, you are vulnerable with that other person. But if you can't be vulnerable with yourself, if you don't know who you are, if you're not even able to address the areas that you need to work on as a person, not that you need to be perfect, but just to acknowledge them and be working on them actively, you will never have a thriving relationship, ever. There's zero chance. So what is it for you? What is the issue that you need to take a look at? What is the thing that you've been ignoring time and time and time again? What is it that we need to address? So we have a saying here at the project, and it's this. When we talk about relationships, it's sex is easy, being vulnerable is hard. The physical stuff is really the easy part. Not that it's just something that we throw around flippantly or don't put weight into, because it's incredibly important. But the fact is that the hardest thing to do is to be vulnerable in a relationship, to go into that depth. So before you can do that, you need to hit that level of being confident and vulnerable with yourself, of knowing who you are. So I want to have 3 things that we can do and give you 3 practical tips of how you can do that. How can you move towards the person that you need to be? How can you just do a true audit of your character, do a true audit of who you are? And here's number 1. Admit what you've been hiding from. Pretending isn't there. What are the things that you're hiding from? What are the things that you've been ignoring? What is the thing that you've been doing everything to ignore and to just put noise around yourself so you don't have to hear yourself think about it? Whenever I know that there's something in my life, a pattern or behavior that I need to work at, a sin or whatever's going on, what I tend to do is I work harder. Or I just like fill my day with noise because I know that God is somewhere there, or my conscience or the back of my mind is wanting to tell me, hey, no, course correct, no, that thing you got to work on, no, don't, you got to deal with that. But if I just have a podcast going all the time, if I have an audio book going all the time, if I'm listening to just more music on Spotify or Apple Music, or if I just can do another round of whatever you watch on Netflix, of Friends or The Office or whatever the next series you want to binge watch is, because are you still here? Yeah, I'm still here, Netflix, because I don't want to have to deal with myself. Because I've been alone with myself for the last 10, 11, 1 year, like 11 months to a year. And we've all spent so much time with ourselves that I think we've started to notice that there's some things about it that we don't like. And that doesn't mean that we're bad or we're not valuable or we can't fix those things, but it means we need to have these real conversations. So what is it that you've been blinding or putting noise around yourself so that you don't have to hear it? The la la la, no, I don't want to hear about it, just let's keep busy. What is it? Identify it, admit what you've been hiding from. And even just right now, be thinking about, what is it? What do I need to look at? The second thing is this: you need to expose it. You need to bring it up, and that doesn't mean expose it just to yourself and say, okay, I know what the problem is now, we'll deal with it, because usually that doesn't work. There's very few times when there's a deep-seated issue that you need to fix that you just can do it by yourself. And last week we had Connecting Point. We talked about the importance of living life together and being in a small group and community, and how we're all part of the body of Christ, which is the metaphor for this community that drives forward together for the betterment of our city and to present the cause of Christ. But we support each other and we help each other. So for you, it might be a family member, it might be a close friend, somebody you trust, it might be a pastor, it might be a parent, a teacher, whatever it is for you. Find somebody who you can trust and talk about it. Talk about it. Say, here's this thing. Not just to have a crying session or to say, that might happen, that's fine. But to actually expose it and to have a conversation about how you can be helped towards fixing that issue. So you might be like, hey, listen, I've noticed this pattern in my character and how I deal with stress and how I deal with issues, and I don't like it. And I'm actually pretty blind to it at times. It's taken a long time to notice it. Can you call me out on this? Can we meet once a month and talk about it? But if you see that pattern, say, hey, Jeff, you talked about that. You're lashing out. You're angry again. You're being cynical. You're being negative. These things that are hurting your life that you came to me to. I just want to let you know I love you too much not to address that. Find someone to be accountable to expose it to, and to help you walk through the betterment of who you are. The third one is this, and this is the most important one. Is talk to Jesus about it. Be honest with Jesus about it. The project, we believe that following Jesus, making the decision to follow Jesus, is the best decision you could ever make in your entire life. And one of the benefits of a Jesus-based life is that you're not alone. You're not alone. Doesn't matter what you're going through. You have God living with you, in you, and working in your life. God wants to help you. Jesus wants to help you through whatever circumstance you're going. He's part of the solution to life transformation, to changing those things that you need to work on, that we all have going on. It starts with Jesus. When we seek Jesus, truly, we become more like Jesus. And Jesus is the greatest example of loving people, being a good human, caring, alleviating injustice. Everything that is good about the human experience, Jesus did that. And when we seek him, we can become more like him. And that will be a part of the solution for you, absolutely. So here's a practical tip as well. Again, we're going to go to the Bible. There's a verse about, a third of the way through the Bible called Psalms, and it's one of two books that are categorized as wisdom literature. It's poems, it's different songs, but wisdom literature because it's wise words. If you read through it, if you're feeling like you're struggling through life, I just encourage you need to start somewhere in the Bible. Start reading through the Psalms or the Proverbs, and Psalms will give you, you'd be surprised how many times if you read one a day, that something that's said in there will actually impact your life greatly. And this one is really good. And this is just like a step-by-step of how we can bring God into this conversation. And it says this in Psalm 139, 23 to 24. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you and lead me along the path of everlasting life. So let's break that down. There's a posture at the start. And you can do this now. You can do this when you're at home. You can do this driving on your way home. You can do this literally anywhere. But posture yourself and say, God, know my heart. Just, I'm inviting you in. I'm letting you in. I'm going to be vulnerable with you, and you can see what's going on. I'm not going to hide it. I'm going to turn off the podcast, whatever it is. Know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Know the things that are giving me anxiety. Know the things about me that are giving me anxiety. And then in verse 24 it says, point out anything in me that offends you. And that's the hardest one. Because I don't know about you, I don't take well when people tell me I'm doing something wrong. I could be like doing something super dangerous driving, and I'm about to like crash into a train, but if my wife tells me to stop or to do something different, I get offended by that. I don't know what it is about that. I don't like being corrected. I think that's part of being a human. But God, I'm giving you permission. I'm making myself vulnerable. You can right now show me the things about my life, the things I don't even know are there. And God will expose those. He won't shame you, but he'll shine a light on them and then begin the process, because the next line is, and lead me along the path to everlasting life. Lead me towards success. Lead me towards an abundant life that's just, it's full of joy and better and just, whatever, being better than I was before. I love that verse. That's something we should do regularly, is go through all those things. Make yourself vulnerable and let God shine light on what needs to be done, and then work together with the other steps we talked about to try and to make yourself whole, really, the best version of you can be. Here's the thing. First, before you can be vulnerable with someone else, you have to be vulnerable with yourself. We've talked about that. You've got to love yourself first. Maybe it's time for you to take a step back and take some time off from relationships. Maybe you've been in a lot of them. Maybe you're like, Jeff, it has been COVID. I haven't been on a date in a year. Like, I'm 23, I'm running out of time, right? Let me tell you, you got lots of time. You'll be fine. There's lots of time for that. But maybe you've been jumping from relationship to relationship, from relationship, and you've never really addressed the things about you that need to be addressed. You're not ready to give yourself to someone else because you don't even know who you are. Maybe it's time to just spend some time getting to know God and getting to know yourself. And that might be the best thing you can do for long-term success in a relationship. Relationships isn't a sprint in your 20s. It's a marathon that hopefully goes on into your 70s, 80s, 90s, however long you live. And you need to do the due diligence and take the care now in order for that to be successful. Maybe you need to take a break, and that's okay. Before you can be vulnerable with somebody else, though, you have to be vulnerable with yourself. But before you can be vulnerable with yourself, you got to be vulnerable with God. That's the whole point of what we're talking about here tonight. If you're running, if you're hiding, if that's the pattern in your life, if you haven't let God into your life, it's going to be a painful experience in some ways. No one likes to deal with these things. No one likes to have a light shone on these things and be exposed in that way. But the reality is you're going to be better off in the long run because of it. You're not only going to be a better person, a better husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, whatever it is. You're going to be a better human being. You're going to be a better Christian or just contributor to society. This is just part of being the best we can be. So maybe you need to talk to someone about this. Find a friend, text somebody tonight, make a phone call. If you don't have anyone to talk to, the project is here. If you need to talk to somebody, you can DM us on Instagram. You can go to the-project.ca and find our emails, and we would love to connect with you. Maybe you're here tonight and you've never been to church before, and this whole conversation is it's igniting just something under you. You're like, I don't totally get it, but I'd like to hear more about this Jesus guy. I like what you're talking about. Or maybe you've been hearing about this for a while and you want for the first time to have this conversation. Maybe you're ready to talk about accepting Jesus and starting a Jesus-based life and having this God that will be with you through every step of every situation possible that you could ever walk through. I want to invite you to do that tonight. Like I said, here, we talk about this all the time here at the project. It's the best decision you can ever make in your life. And that's not just like a slogan. That's not something we put on a piece of paper on the wall. I'm telling you that because that's been my experience. I came through these doors when I was 12. I started a relationship with Jesus, and it has been the greatest decision I could have ever made. It wasn't always easy, but it is the absolute greatest thing I could ever do, and I'm telling you it will be for you as well. So We're going to sing a couple of songs here. It's one of the ways that we worship God. And I got a couple challenges for you. If it's your first time and you want to start that relationship with Jesus, just acknowledge that to God. And then please text us. Take out your phone, pull out your camera app and get on the screen there, and it will bring up a link on the QR code, and it will give you a place where you can connect with us as well. Please do so. Do not hesitate. We want to talk to you more about this on the road, or you can find me after. Come talk to me. Don't leave without doing some sort of action towards that. But if you're walking through a situation, you're like, Jeff, that's me, man. I've been struggling through relationship after relationship, and I know that there's something that I need to shine a light on, that I need to work on to be a better person, to be a better Christian, to be a better person in all areas of relationship. Do those three things. Walk through that verse. There is the end. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you, and lead me along the path of everlasting life. The band's going to play a couple songs, and just do that. Take a chance. Expose it. Ask God. Let him in. And I promise you, it will be better off for it.
So this next song that we're going to sing, we've sung before at the project. I don't know about you, my week was brutal. I had probably one of the worst weeks I've had in a while. And Brett reached out to me to lead on Sunday, or not this Sunday, he reached out on Monday, and he asked me to choose songs for this week. And so I quickly put together a set list, trying to come up with songs that were easy to sing, that I knew, which now saying it out loud sounds really bad. But I threw together the set list, and as I was worshiping through it this week, and as my week progressed, I've set aside my mornings to meet with Jesus, and it's something I've done since the pandemic back in April of 2020, which sounds weird that we're almost a year in. I picked the songs, and my mornings with God just didn't seem to flow the way that they normally do. I couldn't sit with him. I had nothing to say. I was frustrated. I was overwhelmed with work, with life, with just seeing how everyone's lives are seemingly back to normal in other parts of the world, but here. And yesterday I was driving home from my parents' house, and this song came on that we're going to sing next. And it was like everything that I needed to say to God was wrapped up in one song. And it's not that I hadn't listened to it, it's maybe just that I hadn't listened to it fully, I guess, this week. And so I don't know what your week's been like. I don't know if you've stepped into 2021 thinking that it's just going to go smoothly, or that life's going to go great, or if you go on Instagram and you see how everyone's lives seem to be going good. They've gotten a new boyfriend or girlfriend, or they've gotten a new job, and you're just sitting at home and you can't see a way out. The Bible talks about being still in those moments and just waiting for God. And I'll be honest, God didn't say a single word to me this last week in my times with God. But it didn't mean he wasn't there. It doesn't mean that he wasn't listening. It doesn't mean that he can't hear you. And it doesn't mean that I couldn't sit and be vulnerable, because he knows me. And so this song speaks to that, is that there's nothing else you'd rather do but just sit with God. And so that's what I'm holding on to stepping into this week, is that I could find moments to be silent with God. Jeff's talked about being vulnerable, and my hope is that you would take time to sit with God. Maybe it's listening to this song, maybe it's putting on music, or setting a timer, because sitting in silence is tough for us. But just take the time to sit. I can't say he's not going to say something. He might not. But just let him do the work that you can't do yourself. So why don't you join as we sing?
I'm
to just sit and rest in you, that there would be nothing else that our heart desires, but just to be in your presence, to let you search us, to let you do the work that we can't do on our own, that we'd find rest and peace in knowing that there is nothing else, God, but time with you. So Father, I lift up these young adults. I lift up their struggles and their fears and the anxieties and the things that are just overwhelming their heart, and that they would offer it to you as they are vulnerable with you, that you would just open the wounds and that you would heal them, God. We ask this in your name.